my first question to you is, a lot of, we were talking about the whole inspirement thing, right?
Right.
And, so becoming an entrepreneur was a next chapter for you after 20 years in nursing. What advice would you give to someone considering becoming an entrepreneur as a second career, especially just going in a totally different direction than where you were?
Well, that is a hard one, and it's certainly been a fun ride. I would say, first and foremost...
I'm surprised you used the word fun.
It has been fun. I truly love what I do, and I'm passionate about what I do, and I think that's a huge part of our success.
Right.
I would say be fearless. But with that fearlessness, ensure that you're prepared to commit to your business. It is hard to have that work-life balance. Yeah. But in order to be successful as a small business owner, as an entrepreneur, you've got to give back to the business. And most of all, never stop learning. My career in the past obviously was healthcare, nursing, retail, clothing, all of those things I may have loved, but I certainly didn't know how to market myself. But you can do that as a small business owner.
Let's do that. Let's back up. I like to say, don't go back to 1962, okay? But let's go back, talk about being a nurse and then making this change. How did that happen? Walk us through in your mind when you sort of decided to make this change.
Well, my last 10 years in nursing, I worked for a company, and I really had stepped away from the bedside nursing, from the intensive care unit that I started in and loved. And through that opportunity, I learned how to run a business. It was a home health company. They were very good at teaching the strategic pieces, the sales and marketing piece, the business plan approach. Every quarter, we created a plan on what we were going to do and what actions were we going to take to get there. So that was a nice foundation for me as a small business owner. That's all I knew to do when I came into purchasing Fifi's. And so really the decision to leave healthcare was just a matter of it was just a new chapter in my life.
Right.
And it was time.
And kudos to that company for involving, smart. Involve all your people in the process, and it does a lot better, doesn't it?
Well, absolutely. Unless you have your team's buy-in and in your team's involvement, unless you communicate to your team what you're trying to accomplish, you're not ever going to reach your goals because you cannot do it alone.
I can remember the first time I met Julia. Julia and I have known each other for years.
Yeah, forever.
She's got these booklets of notes that she takes, and we're talking, and she just keeps writing, and she keeps writing, flipping the pages, And I just adored the way she was sucking up every bit of information in the room that she could possibly get. And that part of you, Julie, I think is why your success started to happen in the way that it did. Can you talk about that? Because it was in these pieces, right? It was like you now own one of the largest gross and size consignment shops
in the area.
Well, probably North and South Carolina.
It's as far as apparel and apparel's a large.
And she actually has people from South Carolina coming to this Cornelius location. It's impressive.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it didn't start that way. Talk about that progression. How that sort of moves and the amount of planning that you that growth happened. Did it just happen, or was there actual strategic planning involved in that?
Honestly, there's always. Now, I'm better today at strategically planning than I was 10 years ago, but I've always done that. That I brought from my prior life of, in order to get to here, you have to know how you're going to get there and what is it going to take to do it. And so that's what I've always done. I think probably the biggest change or the biggest growth spurt came from the changes in technology. Over the last 10 years, it has been phenomenal. And often at times very hard to keep up with what's next in technology. I can't just have a placeholder with social media. I have to actually have a strategy behind what I'm doing.
Well, and talk about that, because that's why I chose the article that we talked about before, and I've been really impressed. Share all the different ways you're using technology, how you're, advancing your internet presence, all of that your digital strategy.
Okay, gotcha. Well, I can't say that I completely came up with the whole idea on my own. I do have a company that I worked with to prepare digital strategy before me. But prior to that, back in 2007, Facebook was just getting started. And at that time, I was a little more savvy on the computer then, but at that time, we jumped on the Twitter bandwagon. We jumped on the Facebook. The Instagram wasn't so much then, and certainly not Snapchat and not Pinterest, but we got on that wagon early on. We got on the email, because there's a lot of different ways to communicate with your customers.
Exactly.
And like you mentioned before, you have to find the right niche for your market. We don't have a huge millennial or even the Gen X. Is it the Gen X?
Yeah.
The younger ones. So Snapchat's not a huge platform for us, but Instagram is.
Yeah.
For retail, Instagram's a visual. And so we do often sell items just off of that. But back to your question, with our digital strategy, it is all of that. It is not just having a website. You can have the best, slickest website in the world, but if you don't have a strategy behind how you're going to get that website noticed, then it is just out there in Google land. And it is difficult to connect all the dots. You have to make sure your business is identifiable on all of the free platforms, the local directories. And that can be time consuming, but there are services that allow you to pay a fee and then they list you on all of them, which helps your SEO. And at the end of the day, it's about that SEO. It's about when someone types in consignment or clothing, they're going to find you, not your competitor.
Talk to us about your mobile strategy, because even though you are not serving the millennials or the Gen X as much, people assume, that's where the mobile has to be, and it's not true. The mobile is growing by leaps and bounds in the other generations. And so talk to us about all the ways you're using mobile.
Well, of course, first and foremost, our site is mobile ready, so that, we all know that Americans today are never more than about 5 feet away from their smartphones. And that doesn't stop at age 30. Of course, there's 70-year-olds now that can run a phone better
that's the
than me.
fastest